Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's Planning Development Control Committee. It's Wednesday, the 16th of March, and it's 9:30. Just a few notes about procedures during the meeting. This meeting is being recorded live, and it will be live streamed and is being live streamed on the council's website. There's also a television recording being made, and that will go onto the council's YouTube channel after the meeting, and both the recording and the televised recording will be available from henceforth. Could you please make sure that you've turned off your mobile phones or put them on silent? Fire regulations, we're not expecting a practice today, so if you hear the fire alarm, that's for real. And if you could move quickly but calmly down the stairs, please don't use the lift. And the assembly point is outside in Abbey Gardens. Public participation, if you're speaking, then if you could come forward and you press the button at the bottom. I think people who are speaking have already spoken before. And then we'd like to just introduce who is sitting here around the table. So we have the case officer sitting over there, Fiona Sutherland, who's our legal representative, Julie Pinnock, who's head of built environment. I see it's not on there now, so we're going to change it again. I'm Therese Evans, I'm the chair, and my vice chair, Councillor Jane Rutter, is sitting to my right. And then on both wings of the tables, we have the councillors who are part of the planning committee. The procedure is in your papers, which are on the chairs, and so we will start then with the agenda items. Do we have any apologies, and Deputy Member?
Morning, Chair. No apologies, and all members are present.
And I forgot to introduce Matthew, who is the clerk for the meeting. Any disclosures of interest? If you wish to do that later because you didn't realise that your next door neighbour or whatever was speaking, that is fine. Minutes of the previous meeting, pages 9 to 14. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. And then can we accept the update sheet as an addendum to the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. And we start with item 6, the business items, 44 to 46, Broad Street. The application is, I don't know whether I'm going to read out the title or not. No, it's a 2-storey extension and alterations. The case officer is Cameron Taylor, and Cameron, when you're ready, please give us your presentation.
So thank you, Chair. So this is for the application of 44 to 46 Broad Street, following. Thank you, Chair. So this is a presentation of the application of 44 to 46 Broad Street following the committee site visit yesterday for the 2-storey extension and alterations. So here we have the location site plan, with the location of the site being located to the east of Broad Street, and it is consisting of 2 listed buildings, number 44 and number 46, with the site plan showing the location of the proposed extension, which is along the southern boundary of the site, whilst the proposed garden route is located on the northern boundary, in which there is access along the north boundary of the site, which is parking to a variety of dwellings, along with an access to a dwelling which is located further to the east. Here we have an aerial photograph of the site marked by the yellow triangle, in which we can see the residential nature of the area. Followed by the front elevation to the west, with the existing being the left-hand photo, the proposed being the right, and this will be the same across all the plans for the dwelling. And I note for the front elevation, there's no alteration being proposed. Along with the photos shown in front, the left-hand photo being directed more towards number 46, and the right-hand photo being directed towards number 44. Followed by a historic photo from the 20th century, which we can see the frontage of the dwelling, with the site being, which I'm just circling currently with the cursor on the left-hand side of the photo. So next we have the rear elevation, which is the east, with the proposed extension coming off this existing element of the dwelling itself, with the bridge height being stepped down from the ridge of the existing part of the dwelling, along with the alterations, including the addition of the door, the replacement of the existing roof light, along with fenestration changes across to the forge at number 46. Next, we have a photo which is looking towards the rear. So the left-hand photo is looking towards the location of the existing proposed extension, with the right-hand photo looking towards the 46 at the forge. Followed by the left-hand photo being from the 1960s, showing the historic side, showing the rear elevation of the forge, while the right-hand photo is looking towards the rear of the dwelling from that northern access. Next we have the side north elevation, with a projection from the rear elevation dwelling itself being around 7.5 metres. Yeah, being around 7.5 metres. Followed by photos, so the left-hand photo is from within the site, looking towards the boundary to number 42, with the proposed extension still being visible in the photo, whilst the right-hand photo is from within the access to the north, looking across towards number 42. Next, we have the side south elevations, with the window located on the roof slope serving the bathroom and being high-level roof light. Followed by the photos, these are from within the neighbouring property number 42, looking towards the proposed location extension, as circled by the cursor, and then one more side-on towards the boundary. Next, we have the existing proposed ground floor plans, with the extension following the line of the dwelling, with the boundary wall slowly edging away from the proposed extension. Followed by the existing proposed first floor plans, with the site retaining the same number of bedrooms of 3. However, one bedroom is being replaced by a bathroom, with that bedroom then being relocated into the proposed extension. Here we have the garden room elevations. And that concludes my presentation, with the officer's recommendation being for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is the second time this has been at committee. And so most of the councillors have looked at this before, and the decision was postponed until today because we took a site visit which took place yesterday. So we move to the public speaking, 2 public speakers, and the first person is an objector, Alicia Salter. Good morning, Mrs. Salter.
Good morning.
And you know how to put your microphone on, and the clock.
I'm going to stand if you don't mind.
Is yeah, so the clock is on screen. You're going to stand, that's fine. And when you're ready, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Well, as you all know, I'm Alicia Salter, and my family and I have lived happily at 42 Broad Street for 14 years, and we intend to do so for many more. 42 is a listed property, and as such should be protected by the Winchester planning authorities. I note in your update that you have picked exactly the same document that I have, but with a completely different interpretation. Planning Act 1990 of listed buildings and conservation area states, and I quote, "Should the development proposal harm the setting of a listed building, it must give that harm considerable importance and weight. I bring to your notice that this is exactly what the proposed two-storey extension would not do, and I am objecting most strongly. My points are as follows. This extension would completely destroy the enjoyment of my patio, which fills a number of rooms. It is an amenity which is in constant use during the summer months, and during the rest of the year allows daylight to the rooms which surround it, which indeed you all saw yesterday, my kitchen, eating and sitting rooms. Number two, the sheer size of this extension is inappropriate to the scale of both 42 and 44-46, and is effectively a new building. It covers an area which is 60% the size of the Bristow's cottage and 43% of the forge and cottage combined. It rises to a height of 4.2 metres up as far as the eaves and 6.8 metres up to the top of the ridge of the roof. And all of this is only half a metre away from my garden wall. Number three, many of you visited the site yesterday, and thank you for doing so, to inspect our shared listed wall, which I know concerns you. I, in my turn, have consulted a local builder. He pointed out that the lime mortar in the wall needs to breathe, that it absorbs moisture from the rain and dries again in the sunshine. If the void between this wall and the new building is covered, the mortar will crumble and lose its efficacy. The conclusion. This building would tower above anything that exists at the moment. It is completely out of proportion with all its surroundings. I would be left with a dark, claustrophobic tunnel in place of an airy, open patio. Why should my property be sacrificed to fulfill the needs of a house which is too small to meet the Bristow's requirements?
I have to stop you there, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you very much, but don't go away because there might be some questions of clarification from the members. Are there? No, I think having been there yesterday, we have a clear idea. Thank you very much for coming along again. And then the next public speaker, we have Simon Goddard, who is the agent. Good morning.
Right,
So the clock will come on the screen when you start speaking and you have 3 minutes.
Okay. I won't take too much of your time, but I think we just need to clarify some points which you have all seen at site. The application site is actually set lower than the adjoining property. The height of the wall, when measured from the floor level of the property that's submitted the application, is 2.8 metres from floor level. The height of the extension is then half a metre lower than the current ridge level of the rear crosswing that projects from the house. In terms of benefit for the listed building in question of harm, that's always offset against public benefit, which can be difficult to demonstrate with residential properties. But in this instance, the benefit will be to the benefit of the public because it allows for the replacement of the wall alongside the property, which currently has a fence on top of a modern construction wall. And the concrete roof tiles to the old forge building are going to be replaced with clay tiles. So there's a definite benefit to the public in this application. In terms of the heights, the ground floor height is set by the existing floor in the building, and the room height will be 2.2 metres high, 2240, I believe the dimension is. If we look at the door over here, that door height is 2.1 metres high, so the ceilings within that ground floor room, the new room, are quite low. Equally, the height of the room at first floor level the roof, it starts at a springing height of 1900 millimetres above the floor, that new first floor. That first floor is also set by the height of the existing building. So 1900 millimetres is a little over 6 foot before the roof starts to pitch up, following the existing pitch of the existing house. In terms of the question of lime mortar, our practice does a lot of work with listed buildings, including castles, piers, forts, all sorts of things. So we're very familiar with lime mortars. We also asked for a conservation accredited structural engineer to assess the wall, and his report has been supplied to the case officer, and I don't know whether or not that's included within your pack. They have carried out a small trial hole alongside the wall, and the ground is undisturbed chalk, which provides a very good base for a new building to be constructed on. That, at the moment, the structural engineer is proposing that it's going to be constructed on a raft, which is completely independent from the wall and would be independent of the adjoining building. So the ground conditions are good. There's an enhancement to what we're doing with the existing building, and the rooms are all in a very similar size and proportion of what's already there.
Thank you very much. Very good timing. Members, any further questions for the agent, Mr. Goddard?
Thank you, Chair. You referred to the lime mortar used in the wall, and we've heard about its necessity to breathe. Can you say a little bit more about how your proposal would allow this to happen?
Yeah. In terms of lime mortars, what they do is they reabsorb carbon dioxide from the air, so that gives them their hardness. So this would be using an NHL mortar, which is a hydraulic lime mortar. So it's combined with sand, and then it will, say for example, when you have very thick walls, for example, when we're looking at castles and things like that, quite often the mortar in the centre of the wall is still relatively soft. Hadrian's Wall and things like that, there's lots of worked examples of this. So in terms of the mortar should really be considered as something which holds bricks apart rather than glues them together. So the mortar itself will certainly be carbonated on the outside, and there's also an exchange through the actual mortar itself, because it's quite breathable, that you can introduce things like chalk and various other things to improve that porosity. So that allows the mortar to carbonate through the wall. One of the beauties of the lime is that because you get this sometimes you get very, very minor movement, particularly in timber frame buildings, that movement allows the carbon dioxide to be drawn back in further into the wall. So it's an ideal mortar for these situations.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chairman. Comment has been made by the increased size of the property. What, in your opinion, is that size of the increase? 43% has been mentioned already.
Yeah. As far as we're able to calculate, and those percentages are not consistent with our measurements. We provided those to the case officer, and I think we've probably got those on file. I haven't got them in my head at the moment, but they are significantly less than 43% that's been discussed.
Maybe the office could answer that later on.
Could you, I'm sorry, could you just turn your microphone towards your...
It'll start to squeak then, that's the only thing. Yeah, maybe the case officer could answer that question later on.
Okay. Councillor Pearson.
No, my question's been answered, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Linney.
When we're looking at the wall, we're looking at the void between it. But we also noticed that the guttering of each property overhangs the other properties in various places. Now, how are we going to ensure that there is an even airflow to keep the wall stable on both sides? Because one side's going to get the weather and one's going to be in a void where there's no air circulation from what I can see.
If we take those two bits in two separate parts, we have the existing boundary wall, and then the new building will be built alongside it with, as you quite rightly say, the gap between the two. it's possible, and what our drawings are showing is for ventilation to be placed at the top and the bottom of the end of that wall, and then also for them to be, for connections to be made between, effectively, the cells between the different piers, so you can still get that air movement between the two. It's also possible for us where you have the valley gutter, so in other words, the gap between the two buildings, that would be lead lined. So lead has a lifespan of 70 or 80 years. It's laid in the correct bays with the correct steps. And it's also possible for that lead gutter to have ventilation around the sides of that. So you would have at the abutment with the wall, you would have a flashing which would create a gap, which forms an air gap consistently down the length of that as well. So from a ventilation point of view, that's really important. You're quite right, it's very important. But also to prevent vermin and anything else. So we would use, there's a company called Britannia Castings, and they make little cast aluminium air bricks which are powder coated, so they're very durable, they can't get through those. And then on the other upper sections, you also have, there are roof ventilators that we often use, which have a fly screen as well to prevent things going inside that. So that can vent all of those areas. In terms of your question about gutters, if you, in many instances with those, you can still preserve your gutter that you've still got. But with a valley gutter beneath it, the lead-lined valley gutter, that's serving that purpose. So it would be possible for the roof to still have what we would call a dripping eaves into that gutter. But one of the key things is still allowing someone to be able to put a ladder at the end of it, look down it, walk down it, to be able to get and clear anything out and keep that. That's quite common in many of the properties in Broad Street on both sides, and we've worked on both sides of the street. That's quite a common arrangement, to the point that the existing house already has that, but to a lesser degree.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Mrs. Pinnock, because there is a separate planning application for the listed building, the listed wall. Mrs. Pinnock?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think it's just worth, I know members wanted to make sure we satisfied themselves about this relationship, but I would just remind you that we're looking at the planning application today and not the separate listed building applications that deal with the protection of the structure. And some of the questions you're also asking are more around building regulations as well. And I know the agent is able to help us and explain some of that, but I just wanted to remind you that we're here to assess the planning issues today. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Reid.
Chairman, I thank Mrs. Pinnock for that. This is quite unusual in the sense that when a listed building application usually runs alongside the planning one, what actually went wrong on this particular occasion, or has nothing gone wrong, and will this application for listed building come to the committee because of the planning application came to the committee? Would this automatically come to committee, basically?
I have asked this question, but I leave Mrs. Pinnock to explain it to us.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Not at all. Each application has to be tested on its merits. I appreciate sometimes when we've got planning and listed building applications, they will twin track. The listed building application hasn't triggered a committee referral, so that is something that your officers will deal with under delegated powers. We haven't done that yet. We've waited for the process of this application, and obviously it was deferred from the last meeting, so we haven't issued any decision on that yet, pending your decision today on this application, Chair. But we're reminded to approve this today. We would be able to deal with the separate listed building applications under delegated powers.
Councillor Reid, you want to come back?
Is it right then that the listed application could actually have a detrimental effect on this application, in the sense that if this application is approved and the listed building isn't, then that is the final decision? It falls.
Well, I think if you have a split decision and you need both regimes, and you obviously couldn't proceed without that, and they are under different regulations, similarly with building regs and other things, so, we're one component, aren't we, of a number of regimes that need an approval before somebody can commence any else.
I can't ask you to speak, I'm afraid.
Can I ask
No, I'm sorry. But the case officer might be able to inform us of anything that you wanted to say. I mean, I sorted it out, Councillor Reid, is that the planning application is before us, which is the building, and then the application for the wall is separate to this. But obviously they are linked, but they're not both here today. Are there any more questions for Mr. Goddard? No, so thank you very much indeed for coming along. Cameron, anything that you want to tell us in the light of what you've heard in public participation?
In regards to these thought percentages, because unfortunately I don't have that figure myself to hand, there's also so I would just like to bring the attention to the update sheet, in which sort of through discussion with Rachel White, who is the Stock Market team leader, sort of through discussion, sort of through the application itself, there has been an amendment to not paragraph on page 21, with the changes being highlighted in bold on the update sheet, which is the changes that not result in any harm to the significance of the setting of historic interest of the listed building, and further down the final paragraph, and then the proposal therefore considered to be acceptable in line with the relevant legislation, local plan policy.
Okay, so going to the report, councillors, I'm going to ask for questions on page 19, which includes principle of development, page 20 and 21, which mostly is concerned with guidance to us. Any questions there? If not, then we'll go on to the impact. Okay, Councillor Pearson.
If I may, in the guidance, the third paragraph there, it stated there that worries me a little in the light of what we've just been talking about with the listed building application. It's that paragraph, perhaps you could explain this, Cameron, links the importance of the listed building in relation to a new building extension, which suggests you cannot consider one without the other, unless I completely misunderstand that guidance paragraph. Perhaps you could clarify for us in the light of what's been the argument that Mr. Minnick was given forward to separate the two.
Chair, I'm not sure that, with respect, that Councillor Pearce has correctly understood that, but I think the point Julie is making is that there are two applications and that they are being considered. One is being considered through the committee process and one is being considered by the officers. That doesn't mean that that decision making isn't being taken properly. It's just, you know, it hasn't been triggered to committee by the number of representations that would require it to be called in. I know that's slightly unusual because generally objectors object to both applications, and that's why you normally see both applications. That's the only difference. Thank you, Chair.
If I may point out, this was significant phrase, and the NBPF advised that great weight should be given to the conservation of a heritage asset. Now, tell me how I've misunderstood that statement.
Chair, I think that the great weight is always given to the conservation area and to the listed building. The point that Cameron picked up in the update sheet is that he specifically went back to Rachel White, the heritage team leader, and asked the question as to the degree of harm, which is quite obviously an important thing for you to assess, or for her to assess. And Rachel's view is that this application does not cause harm to the setting of the listed building. So you don't need to, obviously you do consider, you don't need to consider harm, because Rachel is telling you that there is no harm, and that's her professional opinion as a conservation professional.
Yeah. Okay.
Just to clarify for my own purposes, if this application were refused, the application for the listed wall could be approved or refused because it's independent of this application. Is that right?
I think, Chairman, in my experience, sometimes two applications, when it's for the for the planning consent and for the listed building consent, they may be intertwined and you may refuse both if one isn't acceptable. But there are many occasions when the listed building works do not have any bearing on the planning decision and vice versa. So you could end up with two different decisions, but of course you can only do the works that are allowed via any permission.
Okay, so moving on. We come then to impact on the conservation area, which starts at the bottom of page 21. We'll just leave that as a separate heading before we go to the South Downs National Park. Any questions, Carl? If not, then we'll move on to the South Downs National Park, which is 1.5 kilometres away. And neighbouring amenities, which is on page 22-23. No questions? Ben, anything else in the report? And then there are conditions and informal checks. So I think we've got to the point of debate. Councillor Rutter.
Thank you very much, Chair. I found the visit to the site very helpful yesterday, and whilst I'm very understanding and sympathetic to the neighbour who feels that this extension is going to be overbearing, I'm afraid I can't agree with her that it's going to unduly affect the light on her patio, because it's the extensions to the north of the patio, so the light is already affected by the other buildings, including her own extension to the back of their house. Probably much more than this new extension will affect the light at the back of the house. So I'm not convinced by that argument, I'm afraid. I think this is a sympathetic extension. It's not out of proportion to the rest of the house, and certainly not out of proportion to other similar extensions that have been built along the whole row over the years. I'm also encouraged that I think it will significantly enhance the historic elements of the forge and improve that and save it indeed for posterity. So whilst understanding that it will be very disruptive to the neighbours and you know, that you are worried about it, nevertheless I think we have looked at it very carefully and we're not convinced that it's going to have any harm on your property. And I'm sure that you will soon realise that it's just another building in the area. You are in the middle of a town, it's well built up, it's quite high density, although of course very historic. So I will be supporting the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chairman. Very much in line with Councillor Rutter. The importance of the visit to me was really there because this lies in the conservation area, which I think I stated at the last meeting, which is why I asked for it to go to a site visit. It is important that we do try to get it correct as possible. The wall itself, which is now coming in under a separate application as a listed building, worries me a little in the sense that one depends very much on the other, and I think it would be sensible to have taken them as per normal at the same time. There was also, if memory serves me correct, a question mark as to the legal ownership of the wall. When I called in prior to the visit yesterday, I looked at the wall and I guessed, looking at the bricks from the photographs presented to us and actually looking on the day but not close, that the buttresses were constructed in about 1960. I was corrected by the owner, who happened to be on site, and said no, they were 1955, so that was interesting. However, what I'm trying to say is actually I was invited in by the owner. Both my wife and I declined to go in because that wouldn't have been the correct procedure to follow. With regard to the light, the property sits on an east-west line, so consequently the light loss I find a little difficult to understand. There may be just a fractional loss, but it would be fractional because it's very rare the sun comes in from the north in this country. However, what it will become, I would guess, on a sunny day, that's one of those days we get very infrequently in this country, a very warm spot to sit and enjoy one's own recreation in that location. So, yeah, I find that a bit difficult. With regards to what Mrs. Salter said this morning regarding the proposed size increase of 43%, I've been looking at the plans before me, and I'm finding that a little difficult to understand. Unfortunately, our officers are unable to verify, or in fact, the agent is also unable to verify, but 43% does sound exceedingly large when you look at the plans before us. Yes, I do have a concern about the wall. The main concern last time was the actual void. I've now been listening to the answers from the agent as to how that will be treated, but of course that comes under a separate application. So yes, I can find no other plain reason to not go ahead with the officer's recommendation. I think we've explored every possibility to protect these structures. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Councillor Pearson.
Well, try to keep my comments brief, but I agree with the two previous speakers. The light issue, I think, is a non-starter, I would go to say, on behalf of Mr. Salter, because as Councillor Reid said, the building is to the north, and unless there's a drastic change in the Earth's axis, that's where it will stay. The sun coming from the south rather than the north, and that's highly unlikely. The concern about the line coming out of the wall, well, I have that situation at home, and it doesn't affect the wall at all. I've got a cavity in behind there, and I presume this new build will be a cavity wall. There's a bedroom behind that wall, which is heating or not heating, as is normal, and it doesn't affect the structure of the walls at all. So, without further sort of building regulation detail, which I'm told frequently is irrelevant when it comes to planning, I can't see any grounds for arguing against Cameron's conclusion as well. But I'm, like Councillor Reid, a little disturbed about this now trend to separate this building application from planning application. I don't think it helps us in our deliberations at all. It may help the planning team, but it doesn't help us, and yet we're being asked to make a decision on what might be important information. But I'll say no more about that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. Councillor Leaming.
Thank you, Chair. Given this a great deal of thought, I think the architect has done a really good job in preserving the character of the house. I think we have a problem with the wall, which should have been dealt with at the same time under the settlement application, because I do feel that gives us a problem. I think that the building extension is on the large side, and the only reason that we could refuse this would be overdevelopment of the site. I'll need to think about that a little bit more.
Thank you. Any further contributions? The visit was very useful yesterday, and I do understand that if you are used to one view and then suddenly you've got a built structure next to you, as a neighbour, that is not probably what you would choose. There is only one window in that frontage overlooking Mrs. Salter's property, and it's obscure glazed, so there's no overlooking there. It is perhaps the bulk that's concerning them. But people have the right to develop their property, providing they don't contravene certain rules, and I don't think this does. There's been a lot of work behind the scenes, both on this application and the one that's not before us. So just because it's not before us, it doesn't mean that it hasn't been looked at very carefully by the heritage team. And we as members have spent a long time, this is the second time we've had a committee, and we all went there yesterday. And I'm quite reassured by the fact that there is another application in to do something with the wall, because to be quite frankly, it was sort of alarmingly leaning. And so I'm pleased if that is going to be sorted out. So yes, I with regret for the neighbours, but I am also going to support this application. So this application,
Chairman, I'm sorry, I just wanted to correct something, and I think it was I misinformed you earlier. The window on the side, Cameron, it can't confirm because obscure glaze, but it's high level, so it would be above the height of looking out, so it's not obscure as far as. Can you explain?
So yeah, that roof light on that side elevation is not, I can't confirm if it's obscure glazed. However, it is a high level roof light which also serves a bathroom as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was just thinking about it driving in, so much time have we all spent on it, but thank you for that clarification. This application has been recommended for approval. All those in favour, please show.
That's all members, Chair.
So that application is approved. Thank you very much. And if you could just give us a few minutes while we set up for the next application. Thank you for coming along today. You are very welcome to stay, but I'm sure you've got better things to do than stay for another application. So we move forward with the next business item, which is agenda item 7, 21/02720/HOU, proposed side extension to incorporate the existing garage/workshop and with a studio created within the new roof, and there are revised plans being considered today. And it is at 11 Meadow Close, Alsford. So the case officer is Cameron Taylor again. So when you're ready, Cameron, off you go.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this is for an application at 11 Meadow Close for a proposed side extension, which is incorporating the existing garage and workshop with loft space to incorporate the studio. Here we have the location and site plan, with the property bordered by the red outlines, which is located to the west of Meadow Close and just towards the east of the junction between Elm Road and Oak Hill. On the site plan, we can see the proposed extension is located here, as marked by the cursor, which is located to the north of the existing dwelling itself, followed by the aerial photograph, the site marked by the yellow triangle, which we can see the residential nature of the area. Followed by the front, which is the east elevation, with the existing being the top and proposed being the bottom. So the proposed extension itself is set below the ridge height of the existing dwelling, and as you can see, it does incorporate the existing garage. On the photos looking towards the front elevation, the left-hand one being directly towards focused directly towards the front elevation, whilst the right-hand photo is further to the north of Meadow Close, looking at an angle towards the property, which we can see in the garage. Next, we have the rear elevation, because it's being top, being the bottom. This is where the revised scheme has come in, which previously there was a Velux tapial window along the rear roof slope. However, that has been removed due to concerns in regards to overlooking. With the rear elevation of the extension itself sitting flush with part rear elevation of the existing dwelling. Here we have a photo. The left-hand photo is from within the site, looking towards the location of where the extension will sit, replacing the existing garage. With the right-hand photo being from within Oak Hill, is further to the west of the site, with this being the property as I'm just circling with the cursor. Next we have a photo. So next we have a photo, the left-hand photo, which is from within the property number 37, looking towards the site of 11 Meadow Close, followed by the right-hand photo, which is back within the site of 11 Meadow Close, looking towards the same boundary, towards number 37. Okay. Next we have the side elevation, which is the north. So again, this is being top, proposed being the bottom, with the extension itself being set back from the principal elevation, which principal elevation, the front is along this, where the cursor currently is, followed by the existing proposed ground floor plans, and then the proposed floor plans, which shows the studio over that proposed extension itself. So that concludes my presentation, with the officer's recommendation being for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have public speakers, and just one fact, which is the supporter. Michael? Sorry. Right. Okay, so we were expecting Michael Simmons, but no one's here on his behalf? No? Okay, so no public speakers because he's not here. We've got one correction as well on the update sheet while we're looking at it, in that we made an error, and it's also town council, not parish council. So shall we start then with principle of development, which is page 47, and the impact on the character and appearance. Councillor Barr?
Thank you, Chair. Just on the proposal, it says the application for the erection of a single-storey extension. Then it says with a roof, a room in the roof. That's got to be 1.5 story, surely.
Yeah, I'm actually. Do you want to answer, Councillor Barr?
So the proposed extension thing was said to be single-storey extension, however, this includes the loft space, which.
Well, that's not a single story then. Can't be.
Well, while you're thinking about that, I've got a query, whereas it says in the title of the application a studio, but on that paragraph, impact on the character, page 48, it says accommodation. Not that it probably makes any difference in planning terms, but. I think Councillor Barr is concerned that it's a 2-story.
Chairman, with your permission, I think I expect the case officer would note that point. I think what he meant was single story in form, but I think we accept there's accommodation in the first floor, and I think the actual description of development just calls it a side extension to create.
If it's called a side extension, yeah, you've got semantics there, which are wrong.
Yeah, and I think I would agree with you that the case officer would accept that where he's written what the proposal is. I think it would have been better to say it provides a two-storey ground and first floor accommodation, Chair, and I think we'd certainly take that away. But then I was going on to say, however, I'm satisfied that the actual proposed description, which is on page 45, which would appear in any decision notice, doesn't refer to it as being single storey. It calls it a side extension and notes that there'd be accommodation in the roof space. So I thought just to say your officers were happy with that and note the point Councillor Fowl made. Thank you.
Could I ask, sorry, Councillor, you're next. Could I ask about the weatherboarding, which is already half up, and it's intending to extend that, isn't it, onto this extension? Well, it just didn't look terribly nice, I just thought, but perhaps that's just me personally.
What was done to the front of the dwelling already, I believe that's within the owner's right to do so without the need for planning. But also in regards to viewing the extension itself, because it's a sort of not cause significant adverse harm to the character of the area through the addition of the cladding to the proposed extension.
Okay. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question of clarification, please, from the case officer. I understand that the revised plans introduced the cabrio windows in the. Is that correct? And sorry, I'll just complete the question. And I'm just wondering whether that kind of window, which, as I understand it, would come down almost to floor level on the inside of the building, is as depicted in the front elevations on page 56.
So the Velux cabrio balcony window, that one was removed under the revised plans due to overlooking, whilst the roof windows to the front elevation are just standard Velux roof lights, so they won't be to ground level or opening up to create sort of a balcony space there.
Thank you, my misunderstanding.
Councillor Reid.
Chairman, just a clarification, if you may. Based on what Mrs. Pinnock has just said, should this property require to be re-advertised? Because it is not strictly according to the original wording on the application.
Do you have to say what you're going to be using the extension for? Is that the concern?
Sorry, Chairman, the point missed is the fact that it says nothing about accommodation above the ground floor.
No, it doesn't. And that's why I've got it underlined on page 48.
Chairman, on page 45, which is under the case number, where it says proposal description, it's described as a proposed side extension to incorporate the existing garage workshop and with a studio created within the new roof space on the revised plans. And that is the description of development. I think that the page 46, where Cameron has described the proposal, those are Cameron's words and they wouldn't appear in the decision. I would also say that the description of development is a descriptor. Actually, what's very important is the plans that are listed in the decision notice and that the works are undertaken in accordance with the approved plans. So I don't think there's any doubt here as to what's been applied for and what you're assessing and considering today.
Councillor Pearson.
Yes, so my question is one of clarification as well, Cameron. Looking at pages 58 and 56 and 58. Now, both of those pictures show the roof lights projecting above the roof line. Now, we don't normally accept that, so why in this case?
I believe it's sort of more of an, I'd say, to show you where the location of proposed roof lights would be. Say further potentially obtained to ensure sort of the projection from the roof lights from the roof if necessary, which confer with Julie.
Do you say, Cameron, the roof lights will not actually project above the roof line? I should position it here.
So in regards to sort of like going to request the additional information for a roof plan and clarification upon the roof lights proposed to be in the roof itself.
So we could condition it that they don't.
Chairman, what I think would be helpful is if we ask for a roof plan so as we can see the position and the level of how much they rise above that roof plan, so as we make sure they don't project too far. A little bit of minor projection wouldn't harm it, because although you see this as a flat 2D, actually visually you probably wouldn't see a little bit of rise in longer views. But I think it's important that we get that detail.
I don't suppose it projects any more than the chimney.
So moving on, anything else in the report? So we've got a paragraph on the national park, but it is quite a small development and a distance from the park, and then historic environment. A lot of us went round yesterday as we were in, also a lot of us went round and had a look at this. No? Oh, Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quickie, the positioning of waste materials, it does appear to be a literary boundary-to-boundary development now. What is the process for storage of bins, etc.?
It's quite a big frontage, isn't it? So is there not space out the front?
So the properties do have large front gardens and sort of driveways to the front itself. In regards to specifics for sort of waste storage, unfortunately I don't have the answer for that.
Yeah. If you look at, well, there's no page, but the east elevation, surely is space there to put the bins. I know there are a lot of them.
Chairman, we don't know the answer, I'm afraid, but we would presume they would put them towards the frontage.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Reid.
Yes, Chair.
Anything else? So debate. Councillor Pearson.
Effectively, it looks unusual on the diagram. If we consider something very similar to this, and I think it was Aldous Battery not that long ago, and I argued in favour of that. Indeed, I would say the same here. Now we had that clarification of the roof lights. Initially, when I looked at the plans, I thought, crumbs, that's very, very close to the neighbour's house. And then I looked at the garage, which they're going to put. It was actually the same distance in the neighbour's house, so you couldn't sustain any argument about that. Although it's going to be a challenge, I think, for the builders to build the footings without impacting on the neighbour's property or grace and favour with the neighbours. But that's not our issue. I don't see any issue with this at all. I mean, it's a little large, but it's in proportion with the old building. And in the light of what I said previously about the Aldous Battery property, I'd be a bigger fool than I am if I said, no, I'm going to go against this one, but I agree with what Cameron's conclusions are.
Any further debate? So this application has been recommended for approval. All those in favour, please show.
Chairman, I know as you're voting with that additional condition on the roof plan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, forgot that. So we need to see the roof plan, which you will sort out.
We'll sort out the condition, Chair. For that.
So can we just see the vote again? All those in favour of approving this application?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So that application is approved. And request for a break. So we reconvene at quarter to 11. move on then. We move on then to agenda item 8, which is 21/02779/FUL. Demolition of an existing garage and replacement with a new 3-bed detached dwelling at Barton Edge, Worthy Road in Winchester. The case officer is Marge Ballinger, and when you're ready, Marge, we're ready to hear your presentation.
Thank you, Chair. This is obviously the proposal site. The property will be split between the two existing and the proposed new dwelling. The site is located on the east side of Worthy Road and will have one single point of entrance from the road. And Barton Edge, which is the host dwelling, seeks to contain part of its front garden for shared access for the proposed dwelling. So therefore, no new access to the dwelling. It will remain within this part of the site. The site is located within a tree-lined residential area along Worthy Road. The density of the dwellings in this immediate area is not a consistent pattern, as there are detached dwellings further south, down here, and blocks of flats adjacent and across the road, here, and then across the road here. And then terrace dwellings further north and east of the site within this area. This is the existing site plan. This shows the location of the existing garage here, which is to be demolished, as well as a small garden room, storage room here at the top of the site will be demolished as well. Some of the trees along the front and in the back are protected. And land level changes occur within the site. The ground slopes from front down further back along within the side garden. There is an upper garden area to Barton Edge within this area with retaining walls. So the land immediately adjacent of the host dwelling is level in this area here. Neighboring dwellings are demonstrated. Barton Court, which are terrace properties, are located here to the right, and Dalzell is below here. This is the proposed site plan. The dwelling will be built into the sloping side garden over 3 floors, primarily perpendicular with the host dwelling. The new dwelling will be a similar building line as the existing garage. The alterations include removing some of the landscaping and trees along the front and side gardens, and those are circled in red through here. Some of the trees here and the trees forward. Again, the small storage building to the front of the site will be removed, and the landscaping will be adjusted to create further parking areas. This will provide sufficient parking and turning areas that meets the required parking SPD and Hampshire Highways approval. Replanting of some of the trees are demonstrated along the front boundary in the darker green circles here. And the trees along the back are to be retained. These are the existing and proposed front elevations to Barton Edge, and then the side elevation of the new dwelling. The height of the proposed is slightly lower than the ridge of Barton Edge, approximately 45 centimeters, so just a slight drop in the difference. The gap between the ground floor levels is 3 meters, and the first floor levels, the gap will be 3.8 meters approximately. And the new dwelling will have similar eaves height as the existing dwelling. These are the existing and proposed northeast side elevations, and this is showing the front entrance of the proposed dwelling below. The existing garage is set back 8 meters from the front wall along Worthy Road and below street level. The proposed new dwelling will be in a similar location, will be recessed further down slightly and leaves a 6.5 meter gap to the wall at Worthy Road, while the 2-story element is approximately 8.5 meters from the wall. It's difficult to see. I just want to point out this is the ground floor element that wraps the 2-story element is back through here. And these are the existing and proposed rear elevations. The height of the proposed new dwelling measured from this elevation is 9.75 meters due to the ground levels changing. The gap to the host dwelling is 3.8 meters at first floor level, and the ground level is approximately 1.5 meters recessed from the upper garden level of Barton Edge. These are the existing and proposed side, the southwest elevation. And just like the southeast elevation, the proposed ground floor of the new dwelling is set back approximately 6.5 meters from the roadside. The relationship of the new dwelling with Barton Edge shows its 2-story building back from the chimney from ground level, approximately center to its side. So let me just point that out, what I just said. I might have said it backwards. So the existing house, just for a line of sight when you view other photos within the presentation, the chimney is approximately centered to this elevation wall. So the ground level element will come to about that line, while the first floor will be stepped back away from that. So it won't cover the full side elevation of Barton Edge. Hedges are to be planted above the retaining wall of the upper garden to Barton Edge, and this will help with screening and privacy between the 2 dwellings. This drawing also shows the timber fins that are proposed along the first and upper floor windows, and this will help provide screening between the new dwelling and Barton Edge. These are the floor plans. They're demonstrated over the dwelling will be built over 3 floors in a staggered relationship. The ground floor covers a small wrap along its front entrance off of the drive and steps down to the majority of the living space with the lounge dining area that leads directly out to the rear garden. And then from the entrance, the step will lead up to the first floor level, which will contain 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. And the steps further go up into the roof for another bedroom ensuite. These are the visual impressions of the proposal in relation to the existing dwelling Barton Edge shown on the left. The materials proposed have considered the retained tall trees within the site and the leaf drop, so it's important to select materials that will age appropriately. A contrasting dark gray brick was chosen with a natural slate roof, and this will allow the building to appear recessive in its setting with the host dwelling. Contrasting timber elements are proposed around windows and doors. The rear elevation demonstrates another view of the timber fins that I described earlier that will provide some screening between the proposed dwelling's upper floor windows toward the host dwelling of Barton Edge. The proposal's rear garden will continue to slope downward within the existing land levels of the site. These are the existing site photos from the front elevation. Photo 1 shows a view from across Worthy Road back to Barton Edge. Photo 2 is a view from the pavement and wall as the site is recessed back from the roadside. Photo 3 is a view of the drive entrance more closely, and this demonstrates some of the landscaping that will be removed to provide some additional parking along the front of the dwelling. So this just shows part of the landscaping that will be removed to increase parking area. These are photos of the side garden where the proposed new dwelling is to be located. Photo 4 is a view along the side of the host dwelling in front of the existing garage. So this is where the dwelling's entrance will be located. Photo 5 is a view from the side of the existing garage back toward Barton Edge. And this shows the land slope that I was describing in earlier slides. The dwelling's first floor level will come to just past the windows in this photo demonstrated here, while the ground floor will continue about midpoint to the side doors shown within the photo's edge. And photo 6 is a view from the rear of the site back toward the proposed new dwelling site. And these are photos of the retained outdoor space to the host dwelling with the loss of the side garden for the new dwelling. Photo 7 was taken from the upper garden area back toward the proposal site. New hedges are proposed near the retaining wall here for screening between the two dwellings. Photo 8 was taken from the rear boundary showing the land level changes and the retained rear garden to Barton Edge. There are steps that lead from the upper level to access this part of the garden, and this space continues to wrap from the northwest to the north side of the garden, as shown in photo 9 shows that side elevation garden space. And the next few slides are for the assessment of the relationship of neighboring dwellings. This page will show the relationship between the dwelling southwest of the block of flats of Dalzell. This drawing shows the side wall. It will sit within a similar line as the existing dwelling or existing garage to be removed. There's an 8-meter distance from the side wall at ground floor level back toward Dalzell, and a 9-meter distance between the first floor level between the sidewalk to Dalzell. And in blue, I wanted to note there is a side-facing window at Dalzell, and this is an estimated location, but will be shown in some other photos. Photo 11 is the view from the proposal site. Specifically, I'm standing in front of the garage level looking back toward Dalzell. Trees within this photo are to be removed. Some of the trees adjacent to the garage will be retained. Photo 12 was taken from the front of Dalzell, looking back toward the existing garage. And this photo shows the recessed pathway along the front of Dalzell that leads toward the side and rear gardens. Photo 13 was taken from the side garden of Dalzell and demonstrating the side-facing kitchen window as referenced within the blue. These are more photos from Dalzell back toward the proposal site. Photo 14 was taken from the communal rear garden of Dalzell looking back to where the proposal is to be built. Some of the trees in this photo, as said earlier, are to be removed, but the hedges will be retained and as existing. Photo 15 was taken from the side garden with views directly toward the existing garage. And photos 16 and 17 were taken from inside the ground floor flat of Dalzell, demonstrating the garage and existing views in the background here. These photos are to assess the relationship of the new dwelling to the terraced dwellings beyond Barton Court. Drawing 18 demonstrates the approximate 18-meter gap between the rear ground floor wall of the proposed dwelling compared to the side wall of Barton Court. It's noted that the trees within the rear garden are to be retained. Photo 19 was taken from the upper garden of Barton Edge, the host dwelling, to the existing row of terraced houses and their rear elevations. This view is the upper side of the garden will not be altered except for the row of hedges are to be planted along here to provide privacy between Barton Edge and the proposed new dwelling. Photo 20 is a view from the rear boundary fence and wall showing the gap of the dwellings behind the terrace dwellings here and the existing views of Barton Edge. Photo 21 is a view from the front of Barton Edge, just to show the relationship, the existing relationship of, Barton Court back to Barton Edge, the host dwelling, showing the relationship as the existing. Photo 22 is the existing view of the rear of Barton Edge in relationship to the host dwelling in the background. Photo 23 is a view from the terraced houses back toward the site of the proposed new dwelling, looking forward of the garage here. And to conclude, this proposal is recommended for approval. The 3-bedroom dwelling does not have a detrimental impact on the character and appearance of the area and not considered to have an adverse impact on residential amenities of occupants to adjacent properties, and therefore in accordance with the policies of the development plan.
Thank you very much. So now we move to the public speaking, and the first person I have on my list is an objector, Ms. Diana Burr. Good morning. And to speak, you press the button at the bottom of the microphone, and the clock will appear, is there just counting down, but it will go back to 3. Yeah.
Hello? Okay.
Hello.
So I'm the person that lives in the ground floor flat, in picture 17, I think, looking out onto the proposed new house. I have 2 main objections. The first is it's very unclear how far away the house will be from my kitchen window, because looking at the plans, there seems to be a much bigger distance between the wall of Dalzell and the hedge boundary than there is in reality. In fact, in the plan it's 5.99, and my measurements on my neighbours are definitely 4.80. I have asked quite a few times for there to be clarity on the distance between the side of Dalzell and the hedge boundary, and then the distance between the hedge boundary and the side of the new proposed house, and I still haven't got any clarity. There's nothing that's been put in writing or no drawings. And this is exacerbated by the fact that in the final report it says that the house is going to run along parallel to the hedge, but it doesn't. In the drawings it clearly slopes towards the hedge. So where my kitchen window is, opposite tree 23 and 24, it's probably, although I don't know because I can't get any clarity exactly where it will be, it could be a metre closer, but I can't get any clarity about that. So that's, I would like to know, I'd like to get clarity exactly how far away the side of Dalzell is going to be from the hedge boundary where my kitchen window is, because I haven't had clarity. And the second issue I have is the height. So a lot of houses were built at the bottom of the garden a few years ago. I've been a resident for over 20 years, and the initial proposals were 3 stories. They were turned down for 2 stories, which were eventually built. So what I don't understand is this house is on high ground. but the 3 stories has been accepted, so that seems like an inconsistency. Also, a lot of consideration has been given to people walking past or driving past on the Worthy Road, and so it says in the report, the conclusion, it says about people going past on the Worthy Road, it says proposed building will be partly recessed into the ground level, although accommodation will be over 3 floors. The result will read as 2-storey dwelling when viewed from the public along Worthy Road. However, the opposite is true of myself and others at Dalzell, because we're in a dip, and the 3-storey building actually reads as 4. So why is there a lot of consideration being given to people just simply walking past on the Worthy Road where we're actually living there, right next to the building all the time? That seems very inconsistent. And I know that there was an original plan that was proposed to be nearer the road, and that was turned down, and that would have been much better because it's on flat ground, and it would have been away from my kitchen window, because at the moment the building is going to be opposite my kitchen window.
Your time is up, I'm really sorry. Thank you very much. But the committee might want to ask you some clarification questions. Councillor Rotten.
Thanks very much for coming along today. So I'm looking at the plans now, near the beginning of our presentation bit of the report.
Yes.
I can't see what page number it is. It's the plan that shows all the existing house and the new house proposed. Is there a land variation between where that's going to be built, where the existing garage is, and where the base of your flat is?
Absolutely. So if you look in picture 14, looking from the back garden, you can see how steep the bank is that goes up to where the proposed building is. So in fact, the 3-storey will appear like a 4-storey. There it is. So my kitchen window's on the left-hand side. That's the path that runs past the window, and you can see how steep the bank is. The tree is going to be taken away and not replanted. So I don't know why the people on the Worthy Road are going to have a tree screen just from walking past, but we're not. So it does seem inconsistent. But yes, you can see it is at a much higher level. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any further questions? No, thank you very much then for coming along today.
I have some diagrams I've printed out here because the person who was going to do this has gone down with COVID, you see, and I didn't know until Monday, so I didn't have time to load up anything up, but I do have diagrams if you want to see them to explain what I mean.
Well, I'm afraid we're not allowed to accept anything which hasn't been through the case officer to verify them.
Are they similar? Are these similar to the ones that you submitted with your objection online? Because I made those visible.
No, these are the ones that you sent me, showing the distance of 2.29 metres from the hedge boundary to the new proposed house, and the distance of 5.99 metres from my kitchen window to the hedge boundary, when in reality it's only 4.8 metres. So the topographic, the actual diagrams are show the gap between Dalzell and the hedge is much bigger than it is in reality, and all the neighbours have pointed this out, but there's been no measurements to clarify it.
I'm just taking advice because normally we don't allow anything to come to committee.
Yeah, Chair, just to confirm that if diagrams or slides are going to be referred to a committee, we do ask them to be submitted at the same time as the public speaking deadline closes, so they have to be seen before then, so we wouldn't allow them to be circulated, I'm afraid.
Would it be possible to get clarity of what the distance is between the hedge boundary and the side of the proposed new dwelling by where trees 23 and 24 are, because I still haven't had that clarity.
We'll come back to the case officer when the public speaking is finished.
Okay, thank you
very much. Thank you for coming along today. One more public speaker, and Mr. Gooston has very bravely stepped in for Mr. Webb, who's not well, I believe. So, yes, that's it.
Yeah, you
And
tested.
you have 3 minutes and the clock will come on the screen. So when you're ready.
Yeah, Mr. Webb tested positive for COVID this morning, so he asked me to go through his words. Our family has lived in Winchester since 2001. My wife and I both work locally and have lived at Barton Edge since 2009. Whilst our children have now flown the nest, Barton Edge remains our family home. We decided to progress designs for a new house on the site of the existing garage in the intention that either my parents, one of my children and partner family would live in it. In contrast to Greenfield rural locations, we felt that reuse of this urban garage site, moving more conducive city centre, presents a more substantial location for a new house. A more sustainable location for a new house. Our garden is surrounded by tall trees and feels very private. We recognise that the care and protection of the garden and its trees are key to the success of projects, so we employed an arboriculturist to survey and review the existing trees. For a pre-application process and site meeting, we reviewed the position of the new building in its relationship to the existing trees, boundaries and the original house. While some of the trees probably originate from a managed garden created when the house was built, south-seeded trees are competing with best specimens in some locations, so some management and maintenance is required. Our proposals include new trees to offset any that need to be removed. We're very fond of our house and tasked our architect to find a solution that was both complementary in scale and size to the original arts class building. The design has received the support of the Winchester Trust. Following several options, we settled on the current proposal that sits below the level of the existing building, creating a secluded garden separated by the existing terraced edge. The lower floor responds to the site's natural level changes, stepping down to the kitchen, dining room, living room. Like the original house, the rooms are arranged over 2 floors and an attic story within a pitch roof. Following a similar theme, the design incorporates a single-storey entrance and porch to the approach side of the building and a bay window to the garden side of the 2-storey volume, stepping back to the neighbouring boundary. We have asked for the house to have high levels of insulation and airtightness, so the external walls and roof have been sized accordingly. As the site is largely oversailed by tall trees to the north and western boundaries, we wanted robust materials that will weather and age gracefully, as well as managing leaf drop from the trees above. So to match our existing house, we've chosen conventional brick construction and slate roof. Our intention is for the original house to remain the focus of the site, with the new house in the dark and recessive tone blending the trees behind it. Currently, we park 2 street cars on the site. If ever needed, this proposal will accommodate the 5 cars required, but with improved turning to allow all cars to leave the site safely in forward gear.
Thank you very much. Don't go away because there might be some questions from members of the committee. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. You made several mentions of the trees. Would it be fair to say that the majority of the trees are of a deciduous nature?
No, there's a sort of bit of a mixture, to be honest. I think the tall trees that surround the house are some of those are evergreens, very tall trees, and then there's a very nice mature walnut tree, which is at the bottom of the garden opposite where the new house would go. So there's a real mixture, essentially.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Joe. Yes, I'm looking at page 90. I don't know if you've got page 90 there in front of you.
I don't.
Or Marsh Maps can put it on the screen. It shows a cross-section of the new building. And I don't know if you can assist me, or perhaps Marsh can later on. The figures that are in that low diagram there are either disproportionately tall, or the ceiling heights are quite low. Could you explain which one it is? Because ceiling height should be about 2.4 metres.
Sorry, you're talking about the cross-section at the bottom of the page?
Cross-section of the new property.
Well, the entry level to the building is about 1.5 metres above the living spaces.
Right.
So you'll see on the bottom of that section on the left-hand side is the entrance porch, and where that figure is standing. And then the ground level to the living space is that lower height where the door is on the right-hand side. And then the stairs that go up to the bedroom level on the first floor. So the ground floor level sort of steps as well, because the section is sort of stepping, and there's a bay window element which wraps around the front of the house, which also sort of steps down. So the dining room and the living room both at slightly different levels. The ceiling height on the first floor, I think, is 2.4, and the ceiling height on the lower level dining area is higher from memory. It's about 2.5.
Yeah, okay, thanks very much for that clarification. Yeah,
it's quite
I appreciate the difference in the ground levels.
Yeah.
No, it was just the impression I get from looking at that diagram, from looking at the people in that diagram, there's always a bad guy. Whilst the ceiling walls were lower than they normally should be, but you've clarified it. Thank you very much.
Any further questions or clarification? No? So thank you very much for stepping in at the last moment and coming along today. We now move to the report, Principle of Development, page 69, but it is in the settlement boundary. Oh, of course, yes. Marge, yes, there are lots of questions over distances there. Sorry, that's my error.
Yes, we requested a topographical survey to use as the assessment of the distance between the two buildings. And I believe I would agree there is a little bit of discrepancy of where the hedge is in relationship to both buildings. But what I thought was more particular to note is that the ground level distances between the proposed dwelling, regardless where the hedge is to be 8 meters from the side of Dalzell, while the first floor will be approximately 9 meters away. So that's what, without acknowledging exactly where the hedgerow is, we use the topographical survey to guide us with that measurement.
It's obviously of great concern to Ms. Burr because she lives in the ground floor flat. So would that be a comfort to her if we don't know where the hedgerow is?
Sorry, I've spoken with her many times. I'm trying to explain what we found more valuable to the assessment was the sidewall. Since the hedge is not going to move, we're not going to move the hedge any further closer or further away. So it's where the sidewall is to be located in relation to her building, the fixed portions of the proposal.
I'm sorry, I can't take any more contributions on the floor. Sorry, thank you. Okay, well, perhaps the questions will come out in the questions on the report. So the first one on page 70, the first section we're going to look at is the impact on the character and appearance of the area. Councillor Pearson.
Yes, thank you. The question really relates to what starts on page 70 and then goes on to biodiversity on page 72, but the two are related. You talk in the second paragraph about the landscaping officer and the removal of trees accepted by a tree officer, which I fully accept. And if a tree there is dangerous or should be taken down, then it should be taken down, particularly as this opportunity arises, especially if they're conifers, because they can be really wicked if they are past their life thing. But the question is, there doesn't seem to be any replacement of those trees. So when you then look to the biodiversity section, you talk correctly, or sort of ecology, you talk correctly about nitrates. You say nothing about by improving the habitat, because you weaken the habitat by removing the trees. So we should surely improve the habitat by planting more trees, or some significant thing to do that. And there's no indication in your report that is likely to be so. The landscape officer takes it into account, and then seems to be left hanging. I know before Mrs. Pinnock says that regulation is not going to come in until November of next year, but nonetheless, in fact, it should still be there.
Yes, there is a tree replanting scheme located within the details. If you want me to show you the slide, it shows it on the proposed site plan.
It'd be useful, please.
there are conditions as well, Councillor Fairclough, on the trees.
And condition 8 as well will support the biodiversity enhancement to the site altogether.
So the landscape officer suggesting that there will not be a decrease, but actually it will be enhanced.
What was it?
The removal of the trees, although the habitat of the conifer and deciduous tree is quite different, but the removal of the trees, what is going to be done will remove my worries. Partly reduce biodiversity as well, reduce the number of habitats. I'm sorry, I'm losing you.
Yes, I'm not sure if you're asking me a question or making a statement.
So don't ask technical questions. You take a tree as a habitat of many creatures, insects and so on, right? Okay, conifers, different habitat from a deciduous tree, because the different types of trees, the different insects and whatever live on those two trees. Now, you're removing the conifers, you said that in your report, right? I understand that, because conifers can get quite dangerous when they go beyond their sell-by date. So no query about that, tree officers agree with that. So the question is, well, what is going to be replaced in order to at least maintain the habitat on that site, or possibly make it slightly better? I'll explain myself better this time around. Thanks.
Yes, there are several trees proposed to be replanted along the front landscaped area once the area has been reconfigured. And there's also a condition to secure additional biodiversity enhancement throughout the site.
That's good news. I haven't looked at the details of that. Thanks. You've moved my concern. Thank you very much.
Councillor Roger, I think you had a tree
Thank
question.
you. Yes, I have a tree question, but mine regards the habitat of people rather than creatures, and is linked to the impact on the flats in Dalziel, if that's okay. I'm trying to understand if and which trees are going to come down between the site of the proposed house and the next door neighbour at Dalziel. And are those trees going to be replaced if they come down? And if not, can we ask that they should be, so that the existing boundary between the properties is enhanced rather than diminished? Because all the new planting that I've seen is along the road frontage and not between the properties. And I've seen something about the hedge being enhanced, but if you're taking down mature trees, that will have a significant impact, especially since the proposed dwelling is a lot higher than the existing garage on the people in that flat. And although the new house is to the north of it, so it shouldn't affect the light, nevertheless it will, be quite an overbearing prospect for them.
Yes, the trees to be removed, there is to be one retained tree around the midpoint of the existing garage for eyesight. The ones to the boundary and within the site here, which is approximately forward of the window to Dalziel, are to be removed. So
is it possible to ask to add to the condition that we replace those trees? Is that not possible?
Yes, there is an agreed tree replanting strategy with assessed against the removals, and there may not be enough space sufficiently for a new tree to grow in that same location.
Which implies to me that the house is going to be a lot closer to the hedge than that plan shows.
I'm not looking at
Mark, how does the southern boundary, I understand we're looking at the structure. How does the built structure of this new 3-bedroom house compare to where the garage is, or was? I don't know if they've taken it down yet. Is it the same line?
Are you referring to the The side line here or the rear?
I'm talking about the bit. I'm talking about the bit nearest to the flats that we've been talking about. Is the 3-bedroom house any nearer the flats next door?
Yes, the side elevation of the garage is approximately, I can see it better on my drawing here. It stops about this location. So with the house in the ground, and I agree that there is a, the hedge is not perpendicular to the dwelling. The dwelling will be built closer to the hedge as it decreases. This drawing, though, however, is a little misleading because this is the ground floor element that stops here, and this is the first floor element. So this bit shown here is part of a rear terraced area, ground floor space, outdoor space. So this will not be part of the building. This bit shown in this area here, unless I'm reading this wrong.
On the plan that you have in front of you on the screen, I appreciate it's, I would call it quite a busy plan with lots of detail. I've zoomed in on my laptop and actually what you can see is the outline of the garage. So I don't know if you want to drop out the PowerPoint margin and zoom in onto that position. Although it's still very busy, you can actually see the footprint of the garage on the plan.
This red line is where the existing garage is.
Does that help, Chair? But Marge has just shown you where the position of the garage is on this plan, zoomed in. If you can go around it again, Marge, and show where the garage is, the footprint of the garage. Yes, it is. Just to show, to answer that question, to show that I think the side wall of the new house is in line with that, but obviously the boundary isn't straight. So, you know, the further back you get it closes up slightly. But in turn, it is not coming any further nearer from the frontage than where the garage is.
Are we done on that? Yes. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. 2 points, if I may. One, picking up from the last comments, that was the question I was about to ask. But the garden path that is proposed actually extends towards the properties next door, the apartments. The construction of that pathway is going to be crucial, is it not, because of where it is and the trees. Do we have an idea how that's going to be constructed? And my second point is to do with the tree, call it replacement, but additional trees to go in. Are they going to be of a semi-mature nature rather than a sapling?
I don't think it states that in the conditions, but we presumably can request that.
Chairman, I haven't got the detail of the plan in front of me, but condition 8 secures all the tree and landscape works to be carried out in accordance with the tree protection and planting plan submitted by, and we label the document and plan reference number submitted to us to ensure that it's acceptable and completed in accordance with the programme agreed with the local planning authority. And then there's the standard rider that if any of those trees or species die, that they're replaced within over a 5-year management regime. So I'm satisfied on that basis that there will be appropriate tree management, tree protection, and obviously that footpath that's there will be constructed to building regulations standards. So I think we're satisfied as your officer's chair on that regard.
Yeah, condition 6 is quite full, isn't it? And what about requesting, if possible, because these things are not always possible, mature tree planting?
On the tree replanting scheme, it does note that some of them toward the front, the smaller ones are to be 1 to 2 meters in height, and some of the other ones are to be 3.5 to 4 meters in height. So it does define that within the planting scheme.
Yeah. But it looks like semi-mature. Thank you, John.
Generally, the only other point I was going to go on and raise is sometimes, you know, it is wise to sort of get the best species we can. Sometimes our landscape architects tell us that younger species have a better chance of taking, but there is that 5-year management plan as well. So I think in combination, those two things are suitable.
And there is a condition that they have to be there for a number of years, isn't it? So.
Right.
Okay, that was, we're still looking at the impact on the character and appearance of the area. Anything else anyone wants to raise? If not, there's no comment on historic environment. Neighbouring amenity, and we have sort of gone into that. And Councillor Raphael? Oh, Councillor Lamy?
Yeah, I'd like to go back to the historic environment on this. What searches have we done to make sure that there's no archaeology based in that particular area, because it is an ancient way into Winchester?
We would consult with archaeology when we do our searches within the site. If there is not an archaeology trigger within our maps, chances are that I did not consult with our archaeologist.
It's just that I do know that in the adjoining terraced houses there was a medieval wall base found a few years ago, which was notified to the museum. So I think we need to think about archaeology on this particular site, because it's an unknown area, particularly for the medieval period.
I'd add, Chairman, when they were doing North Barton, they discovered Roman remains on that site that they didn't know was there. So it's possible there could be something in order. So I would suggest the condition says a watching brief.
I think what normally happens is it goes past our archaeology specialist and they look at the computer and flag up if there are any concerns, which is presumably why it's not here, because they haven't seemed to have any. But we can carry that back to officers.
I think, Chair, we could add a condition on that says in the event that, you know, unexpected archaeology is found, but I think given, you know, the probability of that, given the position of the garage and the building works, you know, to the rear of that and the change in levels, is probably already, if there was anything there, may well have been disturbed anyway, but it could be a lightweight, you know, in the event anything's found, to contact us.
So with the agreement of the committee, we'll add a sort of a brief about keeping a watching brief on archaeology, should any arise.
I'll propose it not.
Okay. Anything else? Neighbouring amenities we're still on. And if not, then anything else in the report? If not, then we move on to debate. Councillor Rutter?
Chairman, sorry, I do have actually a question. This application is a standalone house, or is it tied to the existing dwelling? Because I think one of the speakers mentioned that it was to be for family members. So is it actually a standalone house?
Yes, Chair, it's an independent dwelling. I suppose they may well be building it for a family member or something else, but there'd be no tie on that. It's in an area where new residential development is in principle acceptable.
It's not joined to the main house, is it? So, no. So, Roger, did you say you wanted to speak in debate?
Are we in debate now, Chair? Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, this is on the face of it a simple application, but I have been concerned by the concerns raised by the near neighbour. The topography of the land is quite significant, and I think that the new dwelling has the potential to be slightly overbearing on those flats. However, it is a bit of a way away. It's a very, it's part of Winchester town, so it's pretty well built up all round, and we've seen that from the photographs and the various flats that have been built in gardens and so on. So I would have liked to have seen replacement trees if that were possible. Perhaps that can lie in the record anyway for the owners to consider again. I know at least one tree is going to remain. So if it is possible to put some more trees back into that hedge line, that would be good. But I don't think there are no overlooking windows or anything in the dwelling, so I don't think there'll be anything. And it's not to the south of the flats; it's sort of northwest of the flats. So in terms of light and so on, it shouldn't be too much. So I'm happy that it's the harm. There will be harm, I think, but I don't think it's in planning terms harm that could move me to refuse this application. I think the City of Winchester Trust, that I do have a huge amount of respect for, said that it's a good application which the Trust supports, which is praise indeed from the Winchester Trust, so I'm happy to see that. I think it's an interesting design and has been designed carefully to recede into the landscape and to not be overbearing and not to detract from the main house either. I'm pleased to see the conditions that talk about biodiversity enhancements and that hedges and trees are protected and enhanced. So with that caveat that I would like to see more tree planting along that boundary with the neighbour, I'm content to support the officer recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any further contributions? Councillor Reid.
Chairman, I didn't bring it up in the questions, but I think I agree with Councillor Rutter. What is going to be challenging, I think, is going to be the parking of vehicles, because I think it's going to be interesting to see the way some of those cars actually have to try and get off the site. I'm not arguing, I'm sure it can be done, but there might be a few more manoeuvres than what we'd normally expect.
Thank you. Any further contributions? We were going to add in a watching brief condition on archaeology. Is that right? And we've spent a long time, but this is important, on the trees. And Councillor Rotter was saying that she would like to see further planting of the trees. Do we need a condition, or how would we progress that?
I think Chairman Marge explained the tree planting strategy, and I think we have an approved plan for that, so I think it would be difficult to ask for more, Chair, or add a condition on, in my view. And I think the case officer's assessment is the relationship is acceptable there based on the tree removal that's proposed.
Okay. So this application has been recommended for approval. All those in favour, please show.
That's unanimous, Chair.
So this application is approved. Thank you very much. And thank you to members of the public coming along today. Going to start, not that we going to start because we have a full complement of councillors now. So we move on to item 9, which is 22/00388. TCP. Anyway, it's a tree at 6 Barnes Close, and the officer presenting is John Bartlett. And when you're ready, John, we're ready to hear your presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, councillors. I'm bringing the application concerns involves a Section 211 notice to carry out localised reduction works on a horse chestnut. The application is brought before the committee today as the the horse chestnut tree concerned is owned by Councillor Lucille Thompson. Further to assessing the proposed pruning work on this notice, the recommendation is that no objection is raised to these minor pruning works, and I'm seeking confirmation today that no objection is raised to these proposed pruning works. So the proposal itself involves a localised reduction of the lateral limbs to 2 to 2.5 metres. This is in order to provide adequate building clearance to the property concerned in 6 Barnes Close. The proposed works are on the applicant side of the tree, so will not impact on the owner of the tree. These minor pruning works will not have a detrimental impact on the health or visual amenity of the tree, and the proposal will not have a detrimental impact on the setting and character of the conservation area. Whilst it is acknowledged that the tree can be clearly seen from the road, the works are minor and are to abate a risk of damage to the property, and it will not unduly affect the balance of the tree. And just about there, showing the location of the tree just to the west of 6 Barnes Close, situated in the rear garden there in Christchurch Road. And that is an illustration of the pruning works and the approximate extent of those pruning works, which are minor and to one side of this tree. And the view there of the tree from the road outside 9 Barnes Close, the tree is clearly visible, however the works are not viewed to have an undue impact on the health or visual amenity of the tree. So the recommendation is that no objection be raised to this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we have no public speakers. Could I just clarify here that Councillor Thompson owns the tree, but the person wanting to do the works is a neighbour, and I really don't know how to say that, but it's a neighbour.
Yes.
At 6 Barnes Close.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, the applicant is at 6 Barnes Close. Yeah.
Right. And have we only got one picture of the tree?
So those are the only pictures I have of the tree in this particular presentation. Yeah.
It's just got one picture.
So two different pictures.
Yeah, but they're all taken at night and dusk. Okay.
Yeah, it was quite gloomy day. Sorry. Yeah.
Questions on anything? Quite a short report. Councillor Reid.
Short report, short question. It looks as though the tree's already been trimmed back at some stage or other in the process. Is that correct?
Yes, it has been previously. Though there are branches coming onto the building again, which have grown since.
Thank you.
Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Chair. John, in principle, I don't like this because I don't think trees look well afterwards, but I recognise entirely what your recommendations are, and essentially I have no problem. But may I ask, it's clearly, to my mind, a tree under stress. It's not a good specimen of a big tree, but which leads to the question is, clearly if this is doing good iron, is something done about that? Because to change the balance of the tree, as you know, in a storm, that tree is going to come down, especially as the ivy acts like a sail.
The ivy removal wasn't on the proposal, but that's kind of.
It doesn't affect the TPO.
No. So, but it's a conservation, just a conservation area.
Yeah.
But it's up to the applicant whether they choose to remove the ivy as well. So, yeah.
I mean, ivy doesn't harm the tree. It just uses it for support. What it's sort of doing, it creates like a wind sail. So strong wind, especially for trees and barns, and this will make it cycling balance. This will hold it more easily. But I mean, other than that, I've no problem with it. So.
Yeah, the ivy, the actual works won't significantly change the balance of the trees. So they are minor pruning works. So it's not totally hacking back the main limbs. No. It's literally a localised, more of a tip reduction of the outer foliage.
No. Yeah, I can see in the on page 109 where you've got the orange, which I presume is that why you're going to cut the branch back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would say recommend do it.
Anything else? Any further question? Debate? No debate? So this application has been recommended for approval. Is that what the term is?
No objection.
Pardon?
No objection.
No objection, which means that the works proposed can take place. All those in favour, please show.
It's unanimous, Chair.
So these works are permitted. Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of the morning session. The afternoon session will start at 2 o'clock.